Texas football sets to kick off a new season with higher expectations, a sneak peek into women's volleyball, and what you need to know coming out of the NFL preseason. All this and more coming up next on College Press Box.
Good evening and welcome to College Press Box. I'm your host, Edly Termilien, and he's Robert Gonsoulin. We have a great show for you today. First, let's start with Texas football with Jason Kinander.
I'm lucky to be joined by our football analyst, Jason. Every year, Longhorn fans come into football season with the same hope: be better than last year. As week one is just a few days away, what will their matchup against Louisiana Monroe reflect about their season?
Well, to be quite honest with you, Robert, as exciting as the opening game always is, I don't think this matchup will reflect too much about Texas's season. We'll get our first official look at Quinn Ewers, which will surely be a headline regardless of how he performs, and it'll also be very interesting to see his chemistry with returning players such as Xavier Worthy and Jordan Whittington, as well as new faces like Jaleel Billingsley. Another big storyline is the return of Bijan Robinson for his third and likely final season with Texas. Bijan opens the season as a Heisman favorite and will be looking to bounce back from an injury-riddled second half of last season. Again, as exciting as all of this is, these are just storylines. The reality is Texas will likely win this game by a lot, and that's why for me, the single most important factor of this game is health. After losing Isaiah Nayer and Junior Angelau in last month's scrimmage, Texas cannot afford any more blows before the season truly kicks into full swing. If the Longhorns can leave DKR with everyone they come in with, it'll be a win.
Indeed, Quinn Ewers and Bijan Robinson will be fan favorites to look out for this season. So with that being said, who are you picking to be your preseason MVP, most improved player, and X factor for 2022?
Well, my preseason MVP is a man that Texas's offense will live and die by, and that's Bijan Robinson. His talent is undeniable, and we saw time and time again last season how Bijan could change the course of games with just one run. The key for Bijan this season will be his health. Between turf concerns at DKR and Texas's questions at offensive line, Robinson's season might not be defined by what he's capable of on the field, but more so how often he's on the field. For my most improved player, and this one is cheating a little bit because he did redshirt last season, I'm going to go with Jatavion Sanders. Sanders was a highly regarded athlete out of high school and is now primed to be a big-time weapon in Steve Sarkisian's offense. The word out of Texas's camp this summer was that Sanders had the best hands on the team. Music to the ears of Sark and staff, whose pass catchers were plagued by drops all of last season. Sanders should be a downfield threat for Ewers. Tight end play is a characteristic of Sarkisian's offenses. Those things combined, I expect a big year out of Jatavion Sanders. My X factor for the season, and sticking with offense really quickly because I don't think the defense needs to improve much in this year's Big 12 in order for Texas to be competitive, I'm going to go with Jordan Whittington. Whittington is an ultra-talented wide receiver who has shown serious flashes of stardom across his first 2 years at Texas. With Wyoming transfer Isaiah Nayer shelved for the season and the status of Alabama transfer Jai Hall in question, Whittington will finally have the opportunity to be a feature player in Texas's offense. Now, with said opportunity comes pressure and expectations, and Xavier Worthy again will be the focus of the passing game. But without a reliable second option, Texas's offense can and will struggle to be any better than it was last season.
Now, with many faces to look out for on the offensive side of the ball, I can only get more eager to jump right into the season. So, Jason, how do Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns pan out in 2022?
Well, it's quite the loaded question, and I honestly see this Texas season going one of two ways. I'm going to start with the more sour of the two outcomes, and that would be if the offensive line doesn't improve and Quinn Ewers' growing pains overshadow the bright spots, the defense will be overtasked with needing to keep Texas in games on a weekly basis. The same mistakes from last season, missed open field tackles, drop passes, and poor production on third down, plague Texas, and any defensive improvement becomes negligible because the offense just won't be good enough to keep Texas in games. That version of Texas is lucky to finish 6-6, maybe 7-5. On the flip side, if Ewers plays like the highest-rated high school quarterback since Vince Young, Bijan stays healthy, Worthy and the offense don't miss a beat, and the defense anchored by big senior seasons from DeMarvion Overshown and Deshaun Jameson see improvement, as well as a development in young players such as Justice Finkley or Terrence Brooks, Texas can make a jump similar to Michigan's rise last season, outlasting a tough schedule en route to a conference championship and college football playoff berth. It's a lot to bank on, but if Texas can beat two of Oklahoma, Baylor, and Oklahoma State and avenge that third team in the Big 12 championship, well, Texas might just be back after all.
Thank you for joining us tonight, Jason. Next, we will have CC Rodriguez to talk about Texas volleyball. You don't want to miss it when we come back.
Welcome back to College Press Box. It's no surprise to me that Texas volleyball comes into the 2022 season listed as one of the top teams in the nation. However, after falling short last year in the NCAA tournament, they're still looking to bounce back.
Now we welcome in our volleyball analyst, Cecilia Rodriguez. Thank you for joining us, Ceci.
Happy to be here.
So let's get into Texas volleyball. They were named number 2 in the preseason power rankings. So let's rewind. Last season was a sour one to Texas volleyball. They were losing at home to Nebraska 3-1 in the finals. It was less than unexpected for this team that they were runner-up for the national title just the year before. So what were the biggest factors for them losing last year?
Well, the Longhorns were a 2021 preseason favorite because of their strong returning roster and their arsenal of power hitters. But that Texas squad found themselves struggling against simple defenses and on the service lines. These problems were prevalent all season long and came to a head finally when they reached the postseason. This allowed the lowest seeded team in Nebraska to advance to the semifinals because they capitalized on serving, gave their hitters tons of opportunities to shine, and really suffocated the Texas offense by singling out the top power hitters. Texas will have to do a much better job of fixing these problems this season before it becomes a problem they can't avoid in the postseason.
So as the season rolls around, which player in this roster believes to be who has to stand up to be in this court?
This is going to sound like a broken record, but I'm going to have to say Logan Eggleston and Asia O'Neal, the two senior members on this squad. Let me tell you why, though. This is an important season for Texas volleyball, having lost many key members on their roster like Breon Butler, Jenna Gabriel, and Skylar Fields, who were huge key elements on the net, both defensively and offensively. So with a lot of new faces joining the roster, it will be up to Logan Eggleston and Asia O'Neal to lead this team to another run at the title, which is a definite expectation for this program come December. Eggleston and O'Neal were key elements in making this Texas offense more explosive on the net, like I said before, and the Texas defense more ferocious on the block. If these two stay consistent this season, there's no doubt that Texas has a great chance at making another run at the title this postseason.
So speaking of newcomers, which newcomers should fans be on the lookout?
This season, this Texas roster might have lost some crucial players, but there are a lot of newcomers that Texas fans should be really excited for. Starting out with Kentucky transfer Madison Skinner, who finished the 2020 season on a high with 19 kills in the national championship game against Texas, as a true freshman no less. Last season, she ended with a total of 389 kills, and in last weekend's preseason match against Ohio State, Skinner finished with 17 kills and hit 312. She will definitely be an exciting power hitter to see this season alongside Logan Eggleston. And then the next newcomer for me has to be UCLA transfer Zoe Fleck, a two-time Pac-12 Libero of the Year that averaged 364 digs last season for the Bruins. Fleck also led the Longhorns with 26 digs and 5 assists in the win against Ohio State. She will be one of the strongest players on the roster because she is one of the most accurate passers in college volleyball, who will be crucial to this Texas team in the backcourt. As many of us know, the difficult area for Texas defense when they compete against more physical offenses.
Thanks for joining us, Cecilia. When we return, Justin Goosman and Jordan Geelhoed will recap the NFL preseason along with an update on Lamar Jackson's contract status with the Ravens. You won't want to miss it.
Welcome back into College Press Box. We now welcome in our NFL analysts, Justin and Jordan.
This weekend marks the conclusion of the NFL preseason. While many big stars didn't play in any of the games, the preseason is a good opportunity to give players a chance to impress and earn their spot on a team's 53-man roster. Who were some of the players that caught your eye with how they played this preseason?
So one of the players that I thought looked great in his preseason outing was Dameon Pierce, running back for the Houston Texans. Pierce is a third-round rookie out of Florida and initially was expected to join a muddled committee of running backs including Marlon Mack and Rex Burkhead when he was drafted. However, Pierce may have run away with the starting spot already, no pun intended. His first game, he rushed for over 6 yards a carry and scored a touchdown, and his second game was even more impressive because he didn't play. That means that the coaches value him enough that they don't want to risk a possible injury that could affect his performance in the regular season. Definitely look for Pierce to give a much-needed boost to that Texans offense this year. Another player that really outperformed expectations this preseason, and of course I say this with no bias at all, I promise, is former Texas quarterback Sam Ehlinger. The Colts already have their starter in Matt Ryan, and they have his presumed backup in Nick Foles, but Ehlinger went from being a potential cut candidate to having a legitimate shot at that backup position based off of his preseason numbers. With limited snaps, Ehlinger was 24 of 29 for 289 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. He also added 71 yards and a touchdown on the ground as well, which we just watched. The preseason is the place for on-the-bubble players to prove that they have what it takes to play in the NFL, and Ehlinger has definitely proved just that.
Recently, we heard Tom Brady open up to the media about his absence from training camp. What did we learn from that press conference, and how could this potentially affect the Buccaneers this upcoming season?
Throughout his career, Tom Brady has been the ultimate professional. However, when you miss a substantial amount of time in training camp, there are going to be concerns. After missing 11 days, Brady opened up to the media and attributed the absence to personal matters. He pointed out that he is 45, and everyone is dealing with their own issues. While Brady insists that he's ready to go, his age is definitely something that we need to keep an eye on. Alongside that, the Bucs offensive line is already shorthanded, and they suffered 2 more blows this week. Center Robert Hainsey went down with an ankle injury in their preseason game against the Colts, and his replacement, Nick Leverett, went down with a shoulder injury that same game. The Bucs are now relying on 4th-string center John Molcon, which means the QB center exchanges could be dicey. And for the oldest QB in the league, you need a center you trust to make the right reads and keep you protected. While they should be a lock for the playoffs given the division they are in, it wouldn't surprise me if the Saints are able to give them a run for their money in the NFC South. With a new head coach and questions surrounding the O-line, your Super Bowl champion QB missing substantial time just a couple weeks away from the start of the season, the Buccaneers could be in a world of trouble. That being said, if there is a guy that could persevere through all of that and somehow manage to get to the promised land, it's TB12.
This summer, quarterbacks from Kyler Murray to Deshaun Watson have been gifted lucrative contract extensions in hopes that their elite talents can bring their team a Super Bowl. However, there is one QB due for an extension that notably hasn't received one yet, Lamar Jackson. Where does he stand in contract talks, and will he get paid before the season starts?
Yeah, so this situation is a little hazy because usually in negotiations between agents and GMs, details tend to get leaked to the public. But Lamar is special in that he is his own agent, so he can play things very close to the chest. Now, let me just erase any doubt right now and say that Lamar will certainly get paid. It's just a question of when and how much. The team wants him to sign as soon as possible, but Lamar seems perfectly content on waiting, and he's looked smart for doing so, as the longer he waits, the higher the quarterback market gets pushed up. Kyler Murray's deal is getting him $230 million over 5 years from the Cardinals, with over half of that guaranteed. And Deshaun Watson's contract is the real kicker. $230 million over 5 years, all completely guaranteed from the Browns. And in Lamar's mind, he's a more valuable quarterback than both of them, so it's only right for him to ask for more money than what they were given. There is a risk that if he waits too long to sign, he may sustain an injury that potentially lowers his value as a player, but he doesn't seem too concerned about that despite his very physical style of QB play. If the Ravens want to get a deal done, though, they have to do it fast, as Jackson stated that he would cut off contract negotiations once the season starts, which is less than 2 weeks away. I'd say don't hold your breath on him signing this year, as it's looking more like he's going to wait it out even longer, but just because a deal hasn't been done yet doesn't mean it won't happen. Lamar and the Ravens are just trying to find a deal that is mutually beneficial for both sides.
Thank you for that, Justin and Jordan. When we return, we'll recap last week in Texas sports. You don't want to miss it.
Welcome back into College Press Box. We'll begin our recaps with a couple changes to the men's basketball coaching staff. Last week, head coach Chris Beard gave former special assistant to the head coach Bob Donewald a new assistant coach spot, while filling Donewald's role with the new hire Steve McLean. Both coaches have garnered decades of experience in coaching basketball.
The Lady Longhorns soccer loses to #1 North Carolina with 2 late goals in the second half. But on Sunday, they did beat Florida 3-2. Trinity Byers scored in the 12th and 79th minute, and Emma Reagan scored in the 24th minute. The Longhorns will head up to Oregon to match up with the Lady Ducks.
Rower Kate Nifton was recently named a U.S. Rowing Under-23 National Team Female Athlete of the Year. She is currently a nominee for the 2022 NCAA Woman of the Year.
Christian Moss will compete in the 2022 World Amateur Team Championship. Moss is ranked 19 in the World Amateur Golfing.
Taking a look ahead this week in Longhorn sports, volleyball takes on Minnesota Wednesday at 7 p.m. on the Longhorn Network. On Thursday, soccer plays away against Oregon at 9 p.m. on Oregon Livestream 2, a Pac-12 Plus affiliate. Saturday, the Longhorns open up their season on the gridiron as they host Louisiana Monroe at 7 o'clock on Longhorn Network. And on Sunday, soccer and volleyball are both back at it again at 3 o'clock as soccer faces off against Gonzaga and volleyball plays Stanford. It's going to be a great week of Texas sports that you'll want to see every part of.
That's wrap things off for this week episode of College Press Box. Make sure to tune into other shows this week, including College Crossfire on Wednesdays and 100 Sports Show on Fridays. On behalf of the crew here at TSTV, I'm Edly Termilien. He's Robert Goldstein. Thank you for joining us and have a great night.